Okay, so this is the second example type where we're sketching the graph on a single set of axes. But in this case, what ends up happening is we're going to be changing the period of our cosine functions, okay? So remember, when we change the period, that means that we're multiplying the x value times some number, okay? And to find one period of the function, what you're doing is you take 2 pi and you divide it by b, okay? So in this case, what we're going to do is we have to sketch out the cosine of 3x, okay? So if we say, okay, the cosine of 3x, we have to find out what one period is for that. So we take the period 2 pi divided by 3. So that says one period is compressed to 2 pi divided by 3, okay? So here's normally 2 pi, that's the normal cosine function, right? Starts here, goes here, comes down, and ends here, right? So that's the normal cosine function, right? But what we end up doing is we take, okay, 2/3 pi, that's where we start our function and where it ends, like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna modify our function here. So we're gonna start here, go down, come back up to here. And what happens is right here, one period is at 2 pi thirds. Okay, so we fit one function into, or one iteration of your function into 2 pi thirds. So that means if we continue this graph and we continue this pattern, there's the third one. That's going to be 4 pi thirds. And then right here is where 2 pi ends up. Okay, so what we're doing is we're fitting 3 periods into the interval from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, so that's what our homework example directions will be. Sketch the graphs on a single set of axes for the values between 0 and 2 pi. So now we look at the cosine of pi halves x, okay? So now we're looking at the period is equal to 2 pi divided by pi halves over 2, okay? Because this right here is b, right? And what we're doing is we're dividing by that. So that's the same as taking 2 pi times our reciprocal, 2 over pi. The pi's cancel and we end up with 4. And what that says is that our cosine, one cosine function fits from 0 to 4, right? So if you look at 0 to 4, you have to think of, okay, this is 6.28, right? 2/3 pi, and then pi will be somewhere between here and here, right? So that's 3/3 pi will be right in the middle. So that's where pi is at, and that's at 3.14, right? 4/3 pi, 4 second pi divided by 3 is equal to 4.18. This is equal to 4.18. So what that says is our period should be somewhere about here, where 4 is, okay? So that says if our function will end right here at 4, and it's gonna go from here, 4, and then 2. We gotta find 2, right? 2 second pi divided by 3 is at 2.09, right? 2.09, so right here is where 2 is at. So that means we go from here, down here, back up to here. Oh, I went a little bit too far down because we got to keep in this interval the range correct. There we go. So the red function, okay, the red function, we start at 0, we drop down, and then we come back up and we end at 4. That's what this period says. It says our period starts at 0 and it goes to 4. Then it repeats every 4 after that, right? So it repeats every 4 after that. So my graph looks kind of weird, but that's what we're doing for our cosine of pi halves x. We have to find the period, and then once we find the period, then we can make our sketch. Now, the cosine of 0.5, right? The cosine of 0.5 says what we're going to do is we're going to find the period. The period is going to be 2 pi divided by 1/2, which is basically saying 2 pi times 2, which puts us at 4 pi. And what that says is that our graph gets stretched out, right? It gets stretched out so that one iteration goes from 0 to 4 pi, right? So what ends up happening is when we start here, we're going to go from here, get stretched out, and then we're going to end. So here's the low point. And then we keep going, and one iteration is way out here at 4 pi. Okay? And since our graph was only between 0 and 2 pi, right? Then all we needed to do was give the graph between this window here. So once again, whenever we're changing, whenever we're horizontally stretching or shrinking our graphs, you have to find the period. The way you find the period is you take 2 pi and you divide it by the variable b. And in this case, or the number b. And in this case, it's going to be the number in front of the x values. Be careful whenever you're dividing by a fraction, you have to multiply by its reciprocal, and then you find your period that way. And there we go. There is the second example for our homework set.